Okay, so here we have a Stealth Arms 1911 full-size 5-inch frame. The rails have already been cut. The barrel seat's already been cut. I've had to go through, since I've already put this together before, this is the spring for the slide lock and for the safety. The little spring housing is friction locked in there. You use a small hammer, just knock it gently into the frame. Secondly, you have the ejector up here sitting on top of the frame. It's going to get knocked slightly in there, and then there's a small pin. It's probably the smallest pin that comes in your kit. It's going to go and get fed in through the rails. You can see it comes through on the hole on the other side as well. So those two things are the things you have to do. You may want to make sure that you've milled down your two holes. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Like I said, I'm no expert, or maybe I didn't say that, but we're going to see what we can do. First, you're going to start with your hammer strut and your sear. So you're going to take these two things, one sits inside the other. So you got your little sear, and then I believe this is called the hammer strut. If I'm wrong, correct me. But they're going to sit right in front, beside one another like that. You're also going to get your trigger. So simple enough. Your trigger is just going to slide down inside of the frame, inside the little channels. Make sure, one of the things I realized, there's a small screw that feeds inside here. To be honest, I haven't figured out what it's for yet, but it goes in there. Make sure that it's not too far back. Make sure that it clears the back bar of the trigger. Otherwise, you're going to run into errors along the way. So you're going to go ahead and feed that down into the channel. Then you're going to take these, there's a small hole. You're going to make sure the point of this goes into that hole, and it's going to sit along the trigger. So we're still trying to get it in there a little bit. So if you notice, there's two holes that were set between them. You're going to get the smaller of the two pins that have this little cap on them. The idea is you're going to align them up, and they're going to go through the smaller of the two holes that you drilled. So I need to work and see if I can get this lined up properly. Oh, looks like I lost it. My main goal in building this video or making this video is really to show how to put this thing together and not skip a lot of the steps I think some of the other videos were. Even the Stealth Arms video, it's a good video and they show how to put it together, but they use some parts that aren't the standard. They use a commander spring inside of a full-size frame, so it makes them a little easier to do some of the certain things. So I just wanted to make something that really kind of shows how to put together this gun. So I'm using the Allen wrench key here to kind of get a feed for this. Okay, my pin really wasn't coming up high enough in the top. Okay, after what took forever, we finally got it. So, you can see now through the hole that was in that bar and through the hole that's inside the sear. Now it's all connected. So now we can go ahead and using this pin, we're going to feed it back through using the Allen wrench as kind of a so. Now we have the pin. Now it's going through both of our pieces. So now we're going to push the pin in. My holes are still a little tight from drilling, so I'm just going to push them down lightly. So now that hard part's done. So from here, what we're going to do is one piece that's missing on some of the other videos is we have this backstrap piece. I don't know what it's called, but I know how to put it together. So you're going to need this spring, this thicker, small spring. You're going to need the big cone piece that goes on the end. You're going to drop it down into the hole. The spring's going to sit on top of it. You're going to find this other piece. It has an indentation on the top. That piece is going to sit in the top of the spring. Then you're going to find a little tiny pin. It looks like this. This pin is going to go in here and hold this spring down. So you need to push this in. Once this is in, use this. So I'm going to go ahead, work this thing in. This thing's pretty tight. It may take you a little bit of work to get it in there. But the pin, luckily, doesn't have to be pressed in. It literally slides in pretty easily, as long as you can get it depressed enough. But you got to be careful because, as you know, you're using a spring. Spring's under tension. So, without a lot of work that time, I managed to get the pin in. I pushed it down. Now that's set to go. We're going to set that aside. Come back to our frame. So next, we're going to find our trigger. Mine came already put together. I'm assuming that most of the time they do. So, we got that, good to go. That is going to line up with your top hole. Simple enough. Set it in. Find the larger of the pins with the small head on it. So, you can take this and put it through the hole here. Like I said, my holes are still a little. I've read and said that basically these things are supposed to be disabled to be pushed in. I haven't reached that point, so maybe I need to bore them out a little bit. But I just knock it flush. It seems to be working fine, so no issue. Now my hammer's in. From here, we're going to find our 3-pronged spring piece. And this is a part that I kept messing up, so I'm trying to make an issue out of it. This spring literally sits on top of everything else that's down in here. So it's not going to go in between anything. There's a small groove on this pin right here. If you could see it, the way the pin sits, basically you don't need to finagle it. It's literally just going to sit on top of the sear. So you're going to set it on the back of the top of the sear, nothing else. It's actually, it would fall out if you tipped it backwards. So that's where we're going to take it from here. So we got that in. To keep that piece from falling back, we're going to take this other piece that we've already done, just slide it lightly up in here, just to hold the pieces in. It should be good to go for right now. We can let this piece drop back down. Now we need to find our safety and our backstrap beaver tail. So we're going to find these two pieces. This, I had to mill down lightly on the back end. This back end piece had to get milled because the trigger has to be able to pass under this when it's depressed. So when it's depressed, it raises enough so the back of the trigger bar can come underneath it. That's going to set in here. I've been setting the safety lightly in here. While the safety's in to hold that bar, you need to find a little tiny spring. The little tiny spring has two pieces that go on it, one long, one small. Both have little pointed ends at the end that stick inside the spring. You can take the smaller end once it's pushed together, slide it in here. So it comes in three pieces. You stick the two pointy ends inside the spring, the spring slides in here. That's what's going to hold your safety down. So, from here, I use this opportunity. There's a small bar from the bottom of the trigger. It has to fit into the top of that back strap. So the back strap slides up. That bar goes into that top of that. So here we can go ahead, put our bottom spring in, or I'm sorry, our bottom pin. Our bottom pin is the one that has the groove inside of it. So the bottom pin is going to go into this bottom hole and hold that spring mechanism. Shouldn't take a lot of work. You really just have to get the bottom of it in. Then just make sure it's flush on both sides. So that's it. From here, pulling the safety back to clear everything. Pull the safety out a little bit. Safety is going to go inside that hole. This comes all the way back, so the safety can clear. Using the small Allen wrench that came with the kit, kind of push that spring up so it clears the safety. So safety slides past the little spring head, just enough, then falls flush. Now your safety can work. So, now we've gotten that far, we can take this opportunity to go ahead and put these little heads on one hand side. It has a flathead screwdriver. You thread that into your frame. This is going to hold your grips on. I'm just using a multi-tool because it's what I have handy. You're just going to put it into the two grooves and screw these down just so they're tight. I'd recommend probably putting Loctite on the back of this, but I still have more plans to finish off this firearm, so I'm not overly worried about having them super tight or have Loctite on them right now. It's just something I got to clean off when I want to go to paint the frame. So we're going to screw them down just tight enough. Flip it over. Go ahead, take the other two and do the same thing. I've never built one of these before, so this is the first time. Had a lot more experience with Glocks and stuff. I just wanted to take this opportunity. This is an interesting build kit. It has a lot more pieces in it, and obviously it's a lot more complex. A Glock slides together with 10 pieces. This has maybe 40, 50 pieces. So now those are in. Should have just gotten a real screwdriver here because this has become a pain. Okay, so those are in. So next up, we're going to go ahead and stick our magazine release in now. The magazine release has a small pin, or an Allen head inside there. You're going to drop this into the frame. So it's going to go in. You're going to find your small Allen head wrench that fits inside here. That's not the right one. So small Allen head wrench. Push this up slightly, about halfway, kind of get the feeling for it. When you get it inside the groove, you don't have it yet. So all you're going to do is turn the Allen wrench. It's going to release the mechanism inside the magazine catch. The catch is going to catch, the spring's going to catch, and it's going to fall back flush. And then that's easy enough. Moving on. So we have pretty much the entire lower finished at this point. So now we have to move on to the upper. So, you have your unfinished frame, unfinished rail, or finished as much as it's going to be finished. I guess it's not put together. You take your extractor, and for my extractor, I had to mill out this hole just a little bit, just sand it out with a file, so the extractor can sit all the way down in here. And from what I heard, is you're supposed to tip it just ever so slightly inwards, so when you put up the back plate, it just kind of pushes it flush, and it doesn't spin it. You're going to find your firing pin, and then this spring that fits. On one end, there's it's constricted, on the other end it's open. You make sure the open end goes over top of the firing pin, otherwise, if you put the small end, it won't go all the way down. So you put the open end on top of the firing pin, it just slides down here into the channel. So remember, under tension as you're putting them in, so you have to make sure you have a good hold on it, otherwise they'll get shot out, go all over the place. If I can stop talking for 2 seconds so I can put this in. It's actually getting held up on the extractor a little bit. It got pushed a little bit too far in. So now that's flush. Let's see if this works a little bit better. Pull the pin back. Now our firing pin is slid up in there. Press it without an issue. Moving right along, I'm going to go ahead. And one of the other videos I saw, one of the things that they skipped is a lot of them show the barrel, this piece already installed. So you have the barrel, and this piece. This piece needs to sit in here like this. You're going to find a medium-sized pin in your kit, and that's just going to slide between that pin and that little hoop. I think if you watch the Stealth Arms video, this part he skips by, and to be honest, I put my whole kit together and then realized at the end that I didn't have this in, and I couldn't figure out why I kept having issues with my slide not moving back until I realized that I still had extra pieces. So we're going to go ahead and push that pin just flush. The one thing I've realized about this kit is most of the pins don't have to be super demanded, or they don't have to be hammered in the way a lot of pins on other kits and other guns do. Most of them slide in pretty easy without a whole lot of work. So now it's flush. Let's put it in just a little bit more, just to even it out. Let's see what we got. I'm just making a fool of myself. No, it's a little bit too far. Okay, now it's even on both sides, so we have our little pin in. So this is actually going to hoop with the slide lock when we put it in. So we can go ahead now, take our slide, so the barrel, make sure that little pin's folded down. We're going to slide our barrel into the slide all the way back. From what I read is sometimes you may have to fit the barrel into the slide. I guess this is a whole kit from Stealth Arms, so it's all made to be machined together, but you just have to make sure that the slide can come up into its locking position. So that's good. We're going to take this little cuff piece. Cuff piece has a little notch on the side. Put that inside here. I had to make sure that I actually had to clean these and oil up both this and the outside to make sure this piece, because it has to slide pretty close in between the slide and between the barrel. And if this piece is dry, the tolerances are so close, it kind of gets stuck. It doesn't give you a whole lot of work. Even now, after being worked and sanded just slightly, it's still a little bit rough. So we're going to push that flat and then turn it so it's in the middle of our little circle. We're going to take our cuff piece. It has a little brim. The brim piece goes down into the slide. We're going to work that down in there. These get pushed all the way down. So it comes out where the front cuff is, into that little groove. From here, here's a difference between what I've seen on a lot of the videos is you have this elongated spring. The spring piece is going to come down here. You're going to have a closed piece. It's going to sit inside here. One of the things you're going to have a little bit tough, the Stealth Arms kit I found comes with a two-piece slide. So essentially what we're going to do, or two-piece spring set, this piece is going to slide into here. You're going to slide this piece into here, work the spring down, and then these two pieces right here are going to slide together. It's a little bit of work. I've left this locked back for a while. You have to be very careful because this puts a lot of tension on here, and this piece on the end can shoot off. I shot it into the window when I was first trying to put it together. So we're going to work it down. Make sure that you have this piece right here up, otherwise you're going to run into some pains. Then Oh, see, I already lost it. I'm sure that there's probably a better way to do this, but at this point, I still haven't found it. So we're working the two pieces up together at the same time. Making sure I don't shoot this off. Keeping it locked down. Just slowly start to work these two pieces together. So now they finally made contact. Just hold a little bit of pressure. So they're starting to spin together now. We're going to take the fatter of the Allen wrenches we had, if I can keep this from exploding, and screw these two together. Spun a little bit on me, but at this point, shouldn't shoot out now because it's kind of filled out the channel now. Still got to be kind of careful with it. So I'm putting it where I want it. There we go. So now, we just put this on top of the slide. Making sure we hold that spring in. Make sure this little loop can clear. So we can push this along our frame. And I will say the one thing I was surprised by is even milling these out, they stay pretty tight. I've worked this one back and forth for a while. So we're going to slide it down. Oh. And our slide safety is still on, so we're going to push that up. Now, in that little loop that we attached to the bottom of the barrel, in this hole, one of the things I found that was a little complicated that I didn't quite understand, we need to get that hole on the loop matched up with this hole right here. Use an Allen wrench or something to kind of get it to where we need it to be. You have to jiggle it. There we go. So now, take your slide lock. It's going to go inside this hole. Okay, what I found, now if you notice there's a small notch on the side. Small notch on the slide. The top of this actually has to go between that. So you're going to have to hold the slide back against the spring and work this in. There's also the little pin on the other side of this spring holder that is going to rest against the back side of this slide stop. So I found it's actually easier to kind of work it first and get this pin in before you start working with all that. So pressing this down, if I can get it. They get a little locked up when they're first put in. So now we're going to swing this up. So our screws going into the top of our pins. I don't cover it too much. Just making sure they're tight enough. Like I said, This is my first kit, never built one before, but when I was on YouTube I couldn't find a lot of accurate stuff for the Stealth Arms kits, especially the new Stealth Arms kits, because I think some of the older ones had some smaller nuances. The older kits, I believe from watching the video, needed to have a little bit more milling done. These are cut a little bit better, so they're a little bit more simplistic. But for somebody who's never had any experience with a 1911, if you don't know what you're doing, it can be a little overwhelming. So I wanted to build a video that kind of went through all the pieces, especially all the pieces that belong to this particular kit. So it wasn't something that you had to do a little bit of guesswork. I had to watch 3 or 4 videos and piece together kind of what they were doing, and then even then a little guesswork back and forth and a little seeing what works. So hopefully this helps somebody out if you're putting together this gun. This gun still has a whole lot of oil on it. Probably need to get fired and run through a couple times before it's really kind of good to go at this point. But at this point, we're good to go. Got a piece of my glove on the back there. So, it's all together. Safety, you make sure safety's checked. Make sure your backstrop's checked. Oops. So we're not firing. So, show all good to go. Make sure the magazine goes through. Magazine locks, not a problem. Safety. So, that's how you put together Stealth Arms 1911. All good to go.